Coming up, a Sad Styles production.
Hello and welcome. My name is Mikey Frameworth, signing on to the sign-off for yet another week, and this one's kind of special. I'm excited for this one because I will be bold enough to say that we kind of structure a lot of what we do off of the podcasts and media outlets that have existed in the industry for quite a long time, and the person you see on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube along with us, was, I would say, somewhat of a pioneer there. It's Frank Crupi of the Hockey Illuminati, formerly the Jock and Jill Show. You can see him holding up that mug there. Frank, are those mugs that you're holding up there, the Hockey Illuminati mugs, those available for sale, or is that just for you?
The merch is dropping next week.
There you go.
I've been working on a Hockey Illuminati merch line for a long time. I get people messaging me all the time. How come you don't have clothing yet? How come you don't have merch? It's coming.
It's coming.
Got the hoodie on today. Been taking my time. I wanted to put some merch out that is really nice and things that people actually want to buy. So I've got a whole whack of different items coming, and it'll be, like I said, within the next week or so, it'll be available on all my social platforms. So definitely.
Awesome. And if you don't yet know what he's talking about or what the Hockey Illuminati is, buckle up because you're about to find out. You've been doing this for years now. I mean, you're a veteran of the industry. You got in kind of before it was mainstream to just open up a podcast about sports or have an Instagram page dedicated to it, a TikTok page especially. Hockey Illuminati, I mentioned prior to that, you were the Jock and Jill Show with Holly Nimmons. That may be where a lot of people had first heard about you. You're not doing the Jock and Jill Show. You guys have pivoted to Hockey Illuminati. Why don't you speak a little bit to what that reasoning was?
Yeah, so I started my, content creation career 3 years ago, we'll say. And prior to that, I was always involved in broadcasting. I studied broadcast media in university. I worked with Rogers TV for a little bit, covering junior A hockey. Always had a love for the flashing lights and the camera, even though I got a radio face. I put the camera in front of me.
That's what everyone says. Everyone who's on camera says they have a face for radio. We know you don't. You don't have to lie to us. We're good.
I mean, I don't know, man. Look at this schnoz. Are you kidding me? I got a bit of a black eye too going right now.
It's called character, and I want to ask you about that in a bit too.
We'll get to that, but so I it's funny. I was working with Rogers TV covering junior A hockey. This was maybe 4 years ago, and I got to a point where I'm like, this just isn't fun anymore because I'm so restricted in terms of what I can say, and not just I can't swear on TV or I can't speak my mind. It's just you're really siloed in what you can talk about, and I just felt that there was so much room to be more creative on my own platform. So I left Rogers TV. That was Channel 63 for people in the New York region. It doesn't exist anymore. But I left and I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to start my own podcast and have my own platform to express and speak about hockey in any way that I want. So I partnered up with a friend of mine, Holly Nimmons, who ironically lives down the road from me here in Markham. And we said, let's pitch a show. Let's do something as a bit of a Howard Stern spinoff. Howard and Robin, Holly, interviewing
for sure
people from the hockey world. So we did that for about a year and a half. I think we put out maybe 20 to 25 episodes, and they were all documentary style episodes. And after a while, we kind of went our own ways. No ill will or anything like that, but we just had different interests and had ideas to take the show in a different direction. So I love Holly, and we're still in touch very much so to this day, but she went more of a direction of working on dance competitions, and she's really involved in media as well, but she wanted to take her focus into a different sport. I love dance, especially the dancers, but didn't really have any interest in talking about it. So then I pivoted my focus to a one-man show, and the Hockey Illuminati was born probably a little under 2 years ago, and now here we are. It's great.
Yeah. There was, I remember you and I first, we had known each other prior to it, but the first interaction we really had was, because we are somewhat family friends, which, full disclosure, our families are kind of tightly knit there. But I remember first hearing about you with the Jock and Jill Show because I had brought Eddie Shack over on kind of a lost episode from the show because you had planned to release it and everything kind of went down the way it did. Things shifted, so the platform for that episode might not exist as thoroughly. But Eddie Shack, wooden entertainer, he warrants the nickname, that's for sure. And I remember sitting back and listening to you guys interviewing him and thinking like, man, there's something to this. Like, I think this is kind of the type of thing that I'd like to do. It took me obviously a bit longer to get into the world of podcasting. At that point, I had my own podcast, but it was retro video games, not quite related to the to the world of sports. But I thought, you know what, I think I can use my experience for sports marketing and kind of tell the story that takes place off the ice. Now, when you had shifted to Hockey Illuminati, was there a specific plan to change? Because you'd mentioned that you and Holly had kind of separate ideas on how you wanted to treat the show. What was your idea of a direction you wanted to take the show when you had rebranded from the Jock and Jill show to Hockey Illuminati?
Yeah, good question. And before I get to that, I want to address really quickly the lost episode with Eddie Shack. It has still never been aired, but I have full intention to do so, 100%, because that was one of the best interviews that I ever did. And that interview, I think we sat down with Eddie for an hour and a half, and we were kind of all over the place in terms of keeping the conversation in one direction. So there's a lot of editing that was involved in that as well. I remember we had delayed putting the episode out, and then Eddie sadly passed away. He'd also done some interviews before. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to hold on to this. And we've never gotten around to putting it out, but I have full intention to do so on his anniversary this year.
Amazing. That's great. So keep an eye out for that. And obviously Hockey Illuminati is available on all podcast platforms. You're releasing, it's not quite a monthly schedule, but I do see that you have episodes coming out almost as special editions. And this I'd like to lead into the next question, because from Hockey Illuminati, you sort of shifted from a podcast-centric platform to something that was focused more on media in general and on the internet in general. And for those of you who are trying to keep up, because we're jumping to a bunch of different ideas here, one of the reasons why I really wanted to get Frank on to talk to him about his experiences is because, as we always talk about on this podcast, it isn't just about the game that's played on the ice. And I know Frank has a ton of opinions on that. We might get into some opinions on the current state of the playoffs right now, maybe the state of hockey in general. But we do want to kind of show that there is this world that exists outside of the rink, that features a lot of different individual talents fighting for some sort of foothold in the world of your attention span as sports fans. Frank is someone who's kind of coming up on his own. Like he said, he had some experience in broadcasting, but now he's up against the likes of, a Bob McCowan or Sportsnet in general. Like these are the types of media outlets that you're up against when you choose to just make your own brand. And Frank has done a great job. If you're just listening to us talking, you should check out his Instagram and his Twitter. Instagram is Hockey Illuminati. Twitter is at HKY_Illuminati_, and TikTok, which is his other major. Instagram and TikTok seem to be your two major platforms, at Hockey_Illuminati on TikTok.
Those would be the best bang for your buck, as a user. And
you'll see, I mean, these are daily, sometimes multiple times daily videos that you're putting out there, and it is a type of media that exists that is completely separate from the likes of a Bob McCowan. And I use him as an example because we're obviously affiliated with Fadu, and what he's doing is still relevant, but it does seem like there's a sea change in terms of what people want. It's not necessarily a 45-minute show. It's a 5-minute tidbit of someone they like and trust talking at them, telling them kind of what to think, or maybe telling them what not to think, and they're pissed off about it. So what was that major difference, and was that a conscious change that you made?
You know what? It didn't start out as a conscious change, but it slowly turned into, I guess, a conscious realization that this is the direction that I should be going in. And I guess to your point before, in shifting the focus from the podcast to the platforms, there's a few reasons. I guess I put most of my energies into Instagram, TikTok videos instead of podcasts, which are great. Podcasts are amazing, but for me, I found that I really enjoyed making content on the fly. So my stuff is very raw. I mean, for people who watch me, like sometimes I'm in my car before I go to work, I have a thought, boom, I turn the camera on, I say it. And that's why people like me, because it's so raw and refreshing. And just about all the time I say it how it is. Sometimes it pisses people off, but that's why people love it at the same time. And I started to see that I was just getting more eyeballs on Instagram and TikTok. So I'd make a podcast episode and I'd get, maybe 1,000 downloads. And I'd spend a few hours recording it and editing it and putting it out there. And then I'd make a 3-minute video on, why the Leafs should trade Mitch Marner, and it would get, 20,000 views, and it would take me, 1/10 of the time to do. And I'm like, well, this is interesting. I should really,
I know the feeling,
focus my energies more so on where the eyeballs are. So I just naturally started drifting away from doing the podcast on a regular basis to doing my short form Instagram, TikTok videos. And like you said, it's 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. Quick tidbit of information, a quick hot take, a quick rant. Most of the time, hockey related. Because the other thing too is people's attention spans are just going down the drain, right? Like what social media and TikTok now has done to the attention spans, especially of young people. Like you've got 3 or 4 seconds to grab someone's attention before they decide if they want to keep listening for another 10 seconds, So I just found that doing the short form videos and really leading with some type of an aggressive headline or an aggressive take is a good way to kind of hook the audience and get engagement, obviously, most importantly.
For sure. I've got a question about that then, because I watch all your videos as well, a fan as well as a supporter. I love the way that you do it, how it has shifted into this realm of these 2 to 3 minute videos. If you're out there listening, I know a lot of our demographic probably doesn't even have TikTok or Instagram. Some of you do, some of you might not. When Frank says 3 to 4 seconds of attention span, that is not an exaggeration, and if anything, it's an overstatement.
Yeah.
You have no idea how quickly people are willing to disregard you if the caption isn't perfect, if the first 2 words out of your mouth aren't perfect, if you take more than half a second to say those first 2 words. So it may seem, because you kind of downplay it. You're like, oh, it's really raw. It might be in my car to work, this and that. You sort of downplay the amount of attention to detail that has to go in and the amount of planning that has to go into a video like this. When someone sees a 3 to 4 minute video on your feed, they may think that all you're doing is spending 3 to 4 minutes a day making the video. How much time do you spend from formulating your opinion to thinking about what you're going to say to potentially having multiple takes go into, one of those videos?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of people ask me that. They're like, how many takes do you do to do your videos? Quite honestly, sometimes I do it in 1.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll do it in 10. It's anywhere between 1 and 10, but I guess when it comes to formulating the ideas in my head, what I'm going to talk about, that's something that's gotten a lot easier over time. And I'm at the point now where, like, for instance, like I'm gonna do a video today on why Lou Lamoriello, why I think he left the Leafs. I have a bit of a theory as to why.
Well, you were recently on Crystal Nation with Andrew Crystal, and you gave that theory as well. So if people had listened to you on Sirius, yeah.
So, it's like the more time you spend thinking about hockey and consuming content and reading the articles and watching the videos, you just have a lot of talking points and knowledge and topics that I know will be engaging. That's the most important piece. Right. But I guess to your question, how long does it take to put the videos together? I mean, oftentimes I'll sit down for 15 minutes. I'll fact check a couple stats I might want to bring up or some other things. I'll jot a few sentences down. I'll look at it, and it's like just a quick little, not a script, but with some bullet points that I want to talk about. I break it up in my head, and boom, I do it. And oftentimes I can make these videos. It's happening quicker and quicker because the longer that I'm doing this, and obviously the longer that you do anything, the more hours that you put in, whether it be making Instagram videos or training for hockey or working as a sales rep, whatever the case may be, the more reps you get in, the better you're going to get. So it's almost become seamless. And to this point, like I can make videos that are engaging and that hockey fans are loving, kind of quickly, which is nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you find that because of what we're talking about in terms of the attention span of your viewers and the need to grab their attention, regardless of what your opinion is, you need them to listen to it, and they may not want to off the bat. Do you find you're ever, and you can play coy if you want, do you find you're ever shifting your opinions a little bit or embellishing them a little bit with the intent to clarify later on for that purpose of grabbing people's attention right off the bat?
Sometimes I would say for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyone who's in media will tell you that they do the same to a certain extent.
You have to.
There's no doubt. I'm kind of like the government. Like, we'll tell you what you want to hear, at the time for you to roll along, and then we might tell you something different a little bit later once we've solidified our agenda on you, type of thing. But yeah, I don't know. It's something that is for sure. but opinions change too, right?
Of
And
course, no,
as
of course.
right,
They're
and
organic. They're living just like anything else. Yeah.
exactly. So, yeah, I think everyone in media does that to a certain extent.
Yeah. Now, how much time do you spend after making those videos engaging with your listeners? Do you dedicate a lot of time to the fan engagement, either in the comment section or through email, social media channels, and that sort of thing? Or is your primary goal to put your opinion out there and let other people discuss it for you?
It's a bit of both. It's funny. Like when I first was sort of gaining a lot of traction on Instagram, I was making an effort to respond to every single DM that I got and reply to every single comment that I got. And that's what you have to do if you want to grow. So, for me, going from 5,000 to now almost 20,000 followers, that was something that I did quite regularly. Was, again, I would respond to every single DM, even if it was just, double tap, smiley face, whatever. And I would respond to all the comments. And that's how you build that relationship with your audience. And then as time has gone on, and I've sort of established myself as a presence, as a brand on Instagram, I've done less of that purely because, you can't, like, I get so many messages a day. I can't spend all day on my phone. And what's interesting is that, like, there's a balancing act that is very difficult in media. So, people in the media and some of these really big guys, I envy them, the guys that have massive platforms and that are all over everything. Like you have to be on every second of the day.
Yeah, for sure.
Media, a big storyline breaks, something happens in a game. Like people are expecting you to say something on it. Like when the Mark Scheifele hit happened in the second round there, I woke up the next morning to a bunch of messages. People were saying, we need a video. What's your opinion? What's your take? Like, what do you think? And like, I went to bed after the game. I'm like, I'm not putting my phone on and making a video. I'll do this tomorrow. And people were on the edge of their seats waiting to see what I was going to say. So it's funny. There's a balancing act because you have to be careful for anyone who's in this. And I'm sure you maybe know a little bit of this as well. You got to be careful how much time you really spend with your phone in your face. It's very
all
dangerous.
consuming.
And I think one thing that people aren't conscious of is how much time in a day they spend consuming content.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong with it. It's great, but it's, technology is at the end of the day is a tool, and you got to be careful with how you use that tool as a creator or as a user. So I know I've gone off track here a little bit, but I guess to answer your question, at this point, I make an effort to try to get to as many people as I can in terms of responding to comments and DMs. But I don't have an interest.
You got to draw the line somewhere.
Doing this for 10 hours a day.
For sure. Now, honestly, I don't think you did go off track there. I mean, one of the points that we're trying to build here is, to start from your passion, which is hockey. Your passion is not talking to people about your opinion as much as it is that you love hockey. And what has happened in this current climate of broadcasting and media is that if you want to do that, you don't turn the microphones on at a radio station for 3 hours a day. You are almost literally 24 hours a day expected to have an opinion. And if you don't have that opinion quick enough, they're going to go find it somewhere else. I mean, I would ask anyone who does listen to, their favorite radio broadcaster, and you think about what it is about that person that you like. Part of that may be the reliability of being able to tune in at a certain time and get their opinion. But what if we told you that person who you probably listen to because you consider that person to be a friend of some sort, podcasting, radio, all of this is very intimate for some reason. More intimate than TV almost sometimes because you're getting to envision that you're having a conversation with the person. Now imagine we told you that you can get that person's opinion 24 hours a day. And if not that person, then, well, here's someone who's very similar to that person who's going to have another opinion, and you can get it there. That's what you're up against as someone in this. So you start with your love of hockey, and that is now shifted to something which is exactly the opposite. It used to be 20 years ago, if you loved hockey, you expressed that by talking about it for a bit and then playing hockey. Now it's the opposite. Now we are getting less exercise. We are being less outdoors because we love hockey so much.
That's a great point, Mikey. Yeah.
That's why I like that you went there a little bit. It is a sacrifice. I think a lot of people who see what people like you do and think, well, all he's doing is making a 5-minute video in his car. It is so much more than that. And that's why I wanted to bring up that idea of, you're making a 5-minute video, but how much else goes into it. It's an entire lifestyle. And with that said, I want to kind of ask, you've grown it, like you said, from a podcast to 5,000 followers to 20,000 followers and growing. And if you know Hockey Illuminati, you'll recognize that the comment sections on his video are live and vibrant, and that's exactly what you're going for. What is your kind of end goal with this? Are you looking to build more of a brand? Are you happy if you stay with this number of followers and it's just a passion project? What is your aim with this?
People ask me that all the time, and it's something that I don't even have an answer for, I don't think, to be honest, Mikey. Like, I think one thing that I've kind of learned is goals are great. It's important to have goals. It's important to know where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, you won't get there, right? So it's important to have short-term goals, long-term goals, right? And I do have those types of goals for the Hockey Illuminati in the back of my mind and somewhere on paper, I'm sure. But at the same time, as well, I think people have to realize, and maybe what I've realized is, like what will be will be. I'm just riding this wave right now and not putting too much stress and pressure on the end goal. I mean, would I love to have my own show on Sirius satellite radio one day and, quit my sales job, because I still work full time in sales. I do this as a side gig. Would I love to walk away from the sales world and work, doing this 100%? Absolutely, I would. But I also recognize the fact that, the guys that are on Sirius or the guys that are on Sportsnet or TSN, and quite honestly, I don't even know if I could ever work for Sportsnet or TSN. I think I'd probably get fired in about 10 minutes from there for some of the things I talked about. But like a place like Barstool or Sirius is great. But to have those jobs, to be in a position where you've got a show like that, where hundreds of thousands of people are tuning in on a weekly basis, like it's kind of like you've made the NHL.
Honestly, that's our version of the show. It
is our version of the show, and much like our version, or much like the show, oftentimes, the talent isn't always enough to get you there. There's a lot of other factors that come into play: luck, timing, who you know. I mean, for the most part, if you're good, they'll find you and you'll make the NHL. But there's definitely an element of luck and timing that comes with anything that's successful. And can you create your own luck and timing to a certain degree? Yeah, 100% you can. But I guess where I'm going with this is, I have an idea of where I'd like to go, but I'm not hanging my hat on I have to get there. And I think that's part of my nature, my personality, and why I think people like me as well. Because again, the way that I look at doing this Hockey Illuminati business, if you want to call it, it started as a passion project. And I'm working with some sponsors now, and I'm making some money, which is great. So it's turned into more of a passion project to get to this point, a side hustle. And if it's in the cards of the universe that something big happens with it one day, I would welcome that. I'm certainly going for that. But if it doesn't, I love doing this as it is as well. So we'll see.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, there's kind of a paradox that you're up against. And I think that is the fact that people latch on to the fact that you are going about this because of your love of the sport. There are millions of people, maybe that's an over-exaggeration, thousands of people who are trying to make a name for themselves by explicitly going out and having shitty opinions. That's just something that people do. They think that that's going to get them clickbait. You do have a genuine feel to the opinions that you bring to your platforms. And part of that is this kind of devil may care attitude that you have, which is, I could become famous for this or I can't. I'm doing this because I love it. Now, if that changed and people caught on to the fact that you were actively trying to advertise yourself as someone who's going to make a living out of this, you may not have the same sort of response. So, you talked about the balancing act of work life and relaxation. I'm assuming also up against this idea of, if I try too hard, I may scare off some of the fans who are with me because they know I'm here because I love it, not necessarily because I want to make something out of it.
Yeah, no, and it's funny. I like the term you use here: "Devil may care, devil may not." And I think that it just all comes back to being as real as you can on camera, and the passion. Before I was doing anything with podcasting or media, I was just a guy that loved to talk sports.
Right.
And it's funny, like some of my biggest fans are my buddies, and they'll tell you like, Frank, it's so trippy watching you on camera because like when you are talking into your phone, it's literally like it's like right beside you at the bar, like for years and years. Like
Right.
there's no difference between who I am on camera and who I am off camera, right?
For sure.
So I think that has been one of the draws with why people have enjoyed my content so much, because it's refreshing. There's a lot of bullshit on social media. There's a lot of people, like you said, they're just going for clickbait. There's a lot of people that are just so fake. It's so, aesthetic, and it's honestly makes me sick, some of the shit that's on social media. So it is refreshing to see some people like that. And I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people that are like me that do it this way. But I think that's the way social media should be.
I agree. Yeah. Now, what about how you got your start in hockey? I mean, we all know that you're passionate about it. Did you ever have dreams of making the show, not the media show, but the NHL show? What's your background? What's your history like that?
Oh God.
Because I've seen some pictures of you in some oversized goalie gear. I don't know. Yeah.
yeah. Maybe when I was really young, I dreamed of playing in the NHL, as do many kids here in Canada. But I got my start. I started late in hockey. I didn't start playing until I was maybe 10 or 11, and I actually played forward for a few years. I didn't score a goal in 2 years. My dad was like, maybe you should try goaltending. I'm like, okay, not a bad idea. I got a shutout my very first game ever in house league. We won 11-0. I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. I'm just going to shut out every night.
I'm making the show tomorrow at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but yeah. So I played most of my minor hockey with the Markham Waxers, and then I started playing Junior A in the Greater Metro Junior Hockey League, which is the Outlaw League. Some people may or may not know that league. When I was, it's quite a good league now, but when I was in it, it was a bit of a shit show. But
okay,
I got lucky. And you know what? And when I was playing Junior A hockey, so when I was 19, 20 playing Junior A, I did have aspirations of I want to play in Europe one day. Like NHL, I knew not even close, but I always had a goal in my mind that said, I'd love to go play in Italy or Germany and live the European lifestyle, right? So that was something that I was always, I guess, long term striving for. But first, I'd make it to college. I'd make it to college hockey, right? So I was playing Junior A a couple of years with the Toronto Moose. There was a scout in the stands. So remember I told you about that 11-0 shutout? Okay, when I was like 12 years old. My next shutout didn't come for another 10 years, and it happened when a scout was in the building. It happened when a scout
there you
was
go.
in the building.
That's timing for you.
It was great. It was serendipitous timing. So there was a scout from Adrian College in the building, and I stood on my head, and he came and talked to me after the game. And next thing I knew, I was in Michigan with a small college, Adrian College, playing with their programs, and they have a number of different hockey teams at Adrian. They have club hockey, which is ACHA, and they had an NCAA D3 program. So I spent a few years with both programs, and I also did a lot of media stuff while I was there.
Sure.
But it's interesting, like when and I think about this sometimes, when I got to college, my dream of playing in Europe kind of faded away. Like I was just happy. Yeah. Like I was just happy to be playing college hockey, and I didn't really, and what's interesting is I kind of lost sight a little bit of hockey itself. Like I fell into, the college lifestyle, partying a lot. I mean, I didn't really take hockey seriously. I didn't train seriously. I dealt with some shitty injuries my first couple of years. So I kind of lost a bit of a love for playing, I guess.
Yeah.
But the passion for the sport was still there. And I found myself doing a tremendous amount of work with the school in media. So I actually helped Adrian College found what is now known as the production house, Adrian College Production House. And we live streamed to YouTube all of our hockey games. I was doing the play-by-play. I was hosting a weekly radio show talking about hockey, Detroit Red Wings, stuff like that. So,
How many years ago would this have been?
I'm 31 now. I was at Adrian when I was from 21 to 25.
I mean, that's pretty ahead of its time with all the live streaming and going straight to YouTube. Like
at the time it was.
Yeah, nowadays, I mean, everyone can live stream. OBS and Twitch make it super easy. I mean, these are things where it's, I mean, not easy to get consistent to be good at it, but the option is there and everyone knows about it. Back 6-7 years ago, that would have been almost a new concept. So that's pretty ahead of its time for sure.
It was, yeah, and I recognize the fact that we had a beautiful rink. We had one of the nicest college hockey rinks for NCAA Division III at Adrian, and a tremendous fan base and a lot of players from Canada, from different parts of the U.S. whose families couldn't be there to watch the game. So I was like, we should be live streaming all these to YouTube. So
absolutely,
I teamed up with a couple of faculty members, and we drew up a proposal that we shared with our president. And the next thing we knew, we had funding. We got all this equipment. We built this production house. And actually, in my fourth and final year, I walked away completely from the hockey piece in terms of playing, and I was helping to run this production house and doing all of the commentary, which was cool.
That's awesome. Now, walk me through, because from that point on, you're what, 25, 26 years old, and it wasn't too long after that you got your start, or you had started up with the Jock and Jill show, as we'd mentioned earlier. So you'd spent some time with Rogers. But one thing that impressed me quite a bit with the Jock and Jill show was the level of talent that you were able to get on so early on. Steven Stamkos being one of them, Eddie Shack obviously another, Sarah Nurse was on there as well. So you're clearly very entrenched in the culture of hockey, and you know these people. You mentioned early on in this podcast that a lot of, quote unquote, making it has to do with who you know. Who did you know? How did you get involved with them? How did Steven Stamkos, I know you're from Markham, you mentioned, but how did Stamkos catch wind and agree to come on your show twice?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I'm lucky because this guy's a buddy of mine.
Hey, there you go. He's holding up his Stamkos jersey there.
And Tampa's going to do the repeat this year, by the way.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
Tune in to Hockey Illuminati to find out how they're going to do it too.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'll tell you how they're going to do it. Andre Vasilevsky. That's how they're going to do it.
Yeah. Fair.
But you know what? A lot of people are asking me that when I started doing the podcast. How are you getting all these guests, Frank? Like you're getting legit people. I mean, we had, like you mentioned, Stammer, Mike Camilleri, George LaRock, Hal Gill, a few women from the Olympic team. It was good. Andrew Cogliano. I mean, we had a legit list of guys very early on. And it's a mix of two things. I would say, first and foremost, knowing Stammer. So he is a buddy of mine. I went to high school with him. Lucky to say that I've got a relationship with him.
Sure.
And he was the first guy I had on. And then from there, instant credibility. So then when I was reaching out to other people, hey, we just had Stammer on. Oh, Stammer was on? Oh, okay. Well, this show must be a safe environment. It must be legit. So that was a tremendous help for sure to me. And he's an absolute beauty. He's not on social. I'll just say quickly, he's not on social media. He's kind of quiet and reserved. But like you will not find a more down to earth player in the NHL than Stammer. Like he's the same guy today that he was before he had all the fame and fortune. And he's just, again, he doesn't use social media really. I know he tweets a little bit here and there, but if people got to know, the personality that he has, they'd love him even more than than they already do, especially Tampa fans, I think.
We talk about that all the time on this podcast. I mean, obviously at Frameworth, where we got our start, we have interactions with players all the time. And it is incredible to me how down-to-earth hockey players, more so than any other sport, honestly, in my experience, how down-to-earth they are. Yeah. Do you have any opinions on why that is?
I think that, I mean, there definitely is a trend toward hockey players being less maybe egotistical. A lot of these guys come from humble beginnings, and not that they're the only ones. I mean, there's a lot of There's a lot of guys in,
Right.
in football and basketball that are very humble as well. Not to say that hockey players aren't the only ones, but I think it's just the culture that has
Right.
been the culture of respect that has been developed in hockey. But it's an interesting question. You know what? Like I don't know. What do you think? You
I've
you,
always
you
had
interact
this.
with more you interact with more NHL players than I do probably.
Yeah, I've always had this theory that there's a couple elements of it. One is the fact that what's often said about hockey is that you cannot have a one-man team or a one-woman team. Basketball is often about your own star power. Hockey,
Mm-hmm.
your career is made or broken on the team that you play on. You know, you're not bringing a Division III team into division. You're not winning state championships because you're one good hockey player. Up to a certain point,
Right.
you can, but once you start to get to junior, like that's nothing anymore. So your ego is always checked because it's only as good as the people around you. And then there's also this element of how hard it is to get ice time as a concept. There are basketball hoops everywhere, and you can play on them whenever you want. You cannot go to an ice rink, especially when it's not winter, unless you get that time. And in order to do that at the younger ages, you're waking up at 4 a.m, 5 a.m. You have this relationship with your family that's almost unspoken. It's like you're on the drive to work. It's quiet. Your dad does your skates up or your mom does your skates up. You get out on the rink and there's this passion on the ice. You hear support. You hear active support from your family, which may not be there in some other sports. You know, my only experience really is with hockey growing up. And that kind of brings this family element to it. And then I'm assuming that your family is also kind of telling you, you know, stay humble, this and that, because all the other players around you are. If you are egotistical, you're immediately checked by your teammates and by the players and by the parents around you. You're almost not allowed to be that. And maybe that's why. Maybe it's just hockey culture. And I know hockey culture has a ton of negatives, but if there's a positive to take out of it, that might be it.
Yeah, I think that two great points you made, and hockey is the biggest team sport in the world. Not biggest. Hockey is it's the most team oriented sport.
Sure.
Over anything else, over baseball, over soccer, over basketball. Hockey is the only team sport in the world where if you are dressed, if you are putting that team's jersey on that night, you are going to be contributing. You are going to be on the ice.
Yes.
You can't say that about football. You can't say that about basketball. You can't say that about baseball, right? You can't say that about soccer.
Especially not soccer. Especially
all
soccer, yeah.
I mentioned, you know, there's a large portion of the guys that do not touch the playing field for a single second, right? But in hockey, that is not the case unless you're the backup goalie. But even still, so every single player is contributing, and oftentimes teams that win the Stanley Cup, what's the common denominator with teams that win the Stanley Cup? They've all got incredible bottom six forward groups, and they've got a 5 and 6 D pairing that is reliable.
Right.
So you're only as good as the worst player on your team in hockey, right? Yeah. And I think that's something that we saw with the Leafs this year. Extremely top heavy, but a lot of holes outside of their top guys, and you know they flubbed it once again. So I think you know back to what we were saying before. There's no room, like you said, there's no room to be a prick, egotistical in hockey, because it is the most team-oriented sport there is. And then on top of that, Canadians, we have a lot of Canadians in the NHL. Canadians are the most polite, friendly, loving, peoples in all of the world, perhaps. So that's probably
until we drop the gloves. Until we drop the gloves, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned Toronto and obviously flubbing their chances this year. And we don't typically talk about quote unquote sport talk in the traditional way on this podcast, but I mean, what better time to do it than when we have you on? Let's speak generally about the state of the playoffs. I want to talk quickly about your thoughts on the remainder of the playoffs. And then I want to get into just the state of hockey. Based on it, right now, there are a lot of conversations happening, like from a top-down perspective. One of them is the referees, and the other is the differentiation in regular season versus playoff hockey, as though they're two different sports. So first off, what are your thoughts on, as of recording, which is a week prior to this episode coming out, we have Vegas, we have Montreal, we have the Islanders, and we have Tampa Bay. What are your thoughts on where we stand right now and how the teams got there? Are they all deserving of being there? Are there any outliers? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Vegas is done based on the way that they've played in this series. Like Game 5 was it last night? I mean, they look totally lost, and
Yeah.
their forward group. Hopefully, by the time this airs, I'm wrong, and Vegas is in the finals. But I just their forward group is useless right now. Um, they've lost confidence. It looks like, and I don't see any way in which the Habs are going to lose 2 straight games. I can't believe I'm actually saying this right now, but okay.
If you know Frank and his opinions, for him to say anything good about the Habs, that says something.
It's tough. It's tough. I had one of my fans message me this morning. He's like, Frank, what are we gonna do if the Habs actually win the cup? I'm like, we'll go to grief counseling together. We'll hold each other's hands in the circle. That's what we're gonna do. Like,
oh
I'm
my
gonna
God,
have
I know.
a nervous breakdown if Montreal actually wins the cup. I don't know how I'm gonna handle it. It's going to be a dark time in my life. I might have to deactivate my social media for like a month or so and go on like a spiritual retreat or something like that. I'm not even kidding, Mikey. Like, I want to be fucked up.
No,
too, you know.
Honestly, I get it, man. I get it.
Yeah.
I was at the point, I was so much like, I need to separate myself from sports. And this is going to sound weird as someone who's so entrenched in this world. But as a younger kid, you know, in my early to mid 20s, I was so obsessed with hockey. I was primarily a Penguins fan because obviously Frameworth's relationship with Sidney Crosby.
Yeah.
I'd always liked the past, you know, on the old NHL games, playing as Lemieux and Yager was a treat.
Yeah.
I was so obsessed that I had to watch every single game, which isn't saying much because a lot of people listening to do the same thing. But my days, I was in university at the time where you're supposed to be partying every night. I would stay in every other night to watch the Penguins play. Yeah. And if they won, fantastic. If not, all of my friends knew and all of my neighbors knew, don't fucking talk to this guy. He's done. It's over. And I got to the point where I would spend like a long day at work. I would be miserable. I'd come home and wager all of the remainder of my emotional energy on a game that I had no control over. Finally, I get to like 30 and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
I got to take a step back. I have to be a marginal fair weather fan. It's the only thing I can do for my mental health.
Yeah.
So I get it. I get where you're coming from.
It's so, isn't it funny when you think about how much hangs in the balance for some people of how their favorite sports teams do? It's kind of silly when you think about it. I mean, this is something that's totally out of your control. And, you know, you shouldn't, at the end of the day, you shouldn't be placing your well-being, your emotions, how you're feeling in someone else's hands, you know?
Right.
And, you know, when the Leafs lost, yeah, it fucking stung. And it was a big dagger to the heart. And it still bugs me when I think about it. And even more so watching Montreal now go on this run.
I know.
That could be the Leafs, what they're doing. And also, what the Habs are doing is the Leafs' fault. This is Toronto's fault that this is happening. You know,
yeah.
Like honestly,
we gave them all the confidence they needed.
We gave them all the confidence they needed, right? But at the end of the day, put that aside and try not to let it bother. I mean, my dad's the same way. It's funny, man. Like he gets so upset. You know, I'm like, Dad, just let it go, man. Like it's not a big. It's okay. It's just something that it doesn't have any effect on you.
Yeah.
You know?
Unless you let it, and then it does. Now, one of the reasons, one of the reasons why we are where we are is because we had one of the shining teams in the league. We, as in Toronto fans, we cannot, you know, since you know, I still love Pittsburgh, obviously, but I've seen them win a bunch of times. I would love for my home city of Toronto to win it. We expected a lot of the team this year. Everything was pointing towards this year being different, as we often say that it is. And in spite of that, we were golfing after the first round. Now, what is often being talked about right now, as I mentioned earlier, is the state of the referees, as well as, and this is what I'm more concerned about, how different the regular season is to the playoffs. Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, how the President's Trophy winner never really wins the Stanley Cup, how the standings really make no difference, how this is the only league where an 8th seed beating the 1st seed isn't really a big deal. How did we get here?
Yeah, and the Habs aren't even an 8th seed because they finished 18th in regular season standings. So they're like a fucking 10 seed, really, at the end of the day.
Right.
You know what? I think it's honestly, it's a problem. It is a problem because there's no other pro sports league in the world where the regular season and the playoffs are so vastly different. Yeah. And I think the NHL has a bit of a problem on their hands here because with every year that passes, we're seeing this more and more. And you have fans, myself included now, that have had enough of this and are saying, what the fuck is the point of watching the regular season?
Right.
Honestly, what's the point?
It's true.
Other than if you need to take your mind off of a busy work day and dull yourself with some sports content,
Sure.
okay. But what is the point? There's no point in watching or even to a certain degree caring about how your favorite team or their players are doing in the regular season. All that matters is, are they going to be in the playoffs?
Right. The regular season is the equivalent of the first quarter of a basketball game at this point. Don't even watch it.
Yeah.
Don't even watch it.
Exactly. Or maybe even the first 3 quarters of a basketball game, depending on how you look at it.
That's a better point. Yeah.
So it's like what's the point? What's the point?
I love the idea that the playoffs have an added sense of grit to it. But when the refs are known to put their whistles away and to essentially change the rules, that to me is the bigger issue. Non-calls and this and that and the inconsistency is an issue in and of itself. But the culture of the playoffs being reffed differently essentially makes it a different sport. And one thing I love, like I'm a big soccer fan as well. I see you've got the soccer jersey in the back. It's an Italy jersey. Not sure if you watch much of the Premier League or anything like that, but it's impressive that the only way you win a championship is by being the most consistent team for an entire year, which makes something like Leicester a few years ago in the Premier League, if you're familiar with that, winning the cup out of nowhere. Honestly, probably the most incredible feat in sports history that will never be touched again. That is phenomenal.
Yeah.
If that would be the equivalent of them finally winning, putting an entire year's worth of solid play together and being eliminated in the first round of whatever their version of the playoffs be. They don't have them, but it is so sad to see this happen so consistently in the NHL.
And it's a problem. And I think that the NHL has to have a come into Jesus moment here and say, we can't have this happen anymore. So they either A, have to start reffing the regular season like they do the playoffs, which I think fans would love. I don't think there's a hockey fan in the world that would complain about that. We love the rough and tough, physical style of play, which seems to be diminishing more and more every year until the playoffs come. Or they call the playoffs like they do in the regular season, right? Or option 3, this would be my personal favorite option. Like I was completely content with a 56 game schedule this year. Like going from 80, like would hockey fans really be that bothered if next year we went from 82 to 56? Every game is a little more important.
Hockey fans wouldn't, but the NHL would.
So
they wouldn't make the revenue
that
they need. That's the issue.
Yeah, obviously this would never happen for revenue purposes, but from a fan perspective, selfishly, I would be totally fine with 56 games, and I think a lot of other hockey fans would, because it just makes every game that much more important. But again, I think it's a problem because there's no other league in the world that's doing this, and the NHL's got to be careful because, like I said, again, there's a whole whack of fans that are starting to build this ideology of like, why watch the regular season? What's the point? Like I tell you right now, I don't know if I said this earlier, but I'll say it again. I'm not going to watch regular season next year unless it's a 1-goal game with 10 minutes left.
Yeah. It's so sad to hear it. We just talked about your entire life being based around the passion for hockey, but that passion can only go so far. And I remember hearing this years ago where it's like, the Leafs don't need to do shit to build a better team because fans are going to be there anyway. And eventually they stopped watching. Like the league, I think, often thinks that they have everyone's attention as a gimme, and then anything that comes on top of that is a bonus. And I think we're kind of shying away from that. We're running a little bit short on time right now, so I do want to get into one final announcement that we're going to have here, and that is a kind of a collaborative giveaway that we are doing. Hockey Illuminati mixed with the Sign Off podcast. We're going to be giving away a signed Carey Price jersey of the Montreal Canadiens. This is Frank's idea. It is his olive branch that he is extending to the fans of the Montreal Canadiens after years and years and years of to put it lightly, shit talking the team. There you go. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And here we are. So stay tuned. What we're going to ask that you do is subscribe to the Hockey Illuminati on Instagram and TikTok. Subscribe to the Frameworth podcast if you aren't already. I mean, you're listening to this, so you might as well do it. If you've made it this far, there's just more of this to come, as well as Frameworth Sport on Twitter. Check out those social media accounts. We are going to be announcing exactly how to enter into the draw, and then we are going to be doing a live announcement on Hockey Illuminati that is also going to be broadcast on the Sign Off podcast for the winner of a signed Carey Price jersey. I can't wait to do that because I know you have some really passionate fans. I feel like your demographic might be a little bit younger than ours because we're dedicated more towards the collector who typically has a little bit more money and maybe has been around the bush a little bit more and listens to podcasts still instead of watching on Instagram often. So keep your eyes peeled there. We'll announce some more on Frameworth's Twitter account and on our insider feed. Frank, before we go, any plugs that you got from your end?
No, not really. Just, fucking boycott the Leafs if you're a Leaf fan next year during the regular season. Because, back to what you were saying before, like, this team thinks that everyone will just show up and tune in and buy tickets and buy merch no matter what. Well, you know what? I really have a sense that next year, things might feel a little different with this Leaf team because I think that, we've had a lot of hardships in Toronto, as Leaf fans. But this year, I think was the worst one that I've seen in my life as a fan.
You said in a video it's worse than the Boston collapse, and I absolutely agree with you. This one was slower.
It's just I hope Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shannon are losing sleep at night because they were given the keys to a Ferrari and they drove the fucking Ferrari off the cliff. And like there needs to be a message sent to the highest levels of MLSE that the fans are pissed. Like I hope that the viewership is down for a regular season next year. I hope that
I can't imagine it won't be.
And maybe it will, maybe it won't. But like it's like Leaf Nation, we've been taken advantage of, and it's bullshit. So that's my point.
Of course we have. We're too passionate.
Don't buy any merch next year. Don't buy any tickets. If someone gives you tickets for free, sure, go to the game, but don't buy a regular season ticket. Let's see what happens in the playoffs. I still love this team and I'll always support them, but right now it's a love-hate relationship. So that's my point.
I love it. Now, one last thing before we go. You can realistically take one player on the Leafs and exchange them for another player, anyone else in the league. It has to be somewhat realistic. What's the swap you're making?
A realistic trade?
Yeah, no one has to agree to it because you can have a franchise player, but of similar skill levels, who are you changing that's going to have the biggest impact on the team?
If you're the Calgary Flames, would you take Mitch Marner and maybe Nylander? Yeah, sure. Would you take Marner and Nylander for Andrew Mangiapane and Matthew Tkachuk?
That'd give some grit. I'm not against it. We're obviously big fans of Marner over here at Frameworth. I know that you've got your thoughts on where he's going to end up, but look, grit. That it's clear that that's what the Leafs need to do because that's what was lacking a lot of it in the playoffs. And look, grit is easier to come by than skill. So I think we need to start giving up on the President's Trophy, making sure we make the playoffs, and just having a Tom Wilson on our team somewhere.
and speaking of making the playoffs. And by the way, I would do that deal in a heartbeat because I love Andrew Mangiapane. He's a paisano, and Matthew Tkachuk has an amazing blend of skill and grit that is a rare throwback in the NHL. I think, in terms of next year, you want to talk about the Leafs? Like, I think they could potentially be hard pressed to even make the playoffs next year because the standings are going. We're going back to regular standings next year. Okay, so you can throw this North Division out the window, and now the Leafs are going to be competing with Tampa, Boston, Washington, Pittsburgh, Philly, Montreal, the Rangers, the Jets. God, who am I forgetting? There's other teams in even Ottawa will be better next year. Yeah. And I think there's a chance that the Leafs could potentially come back a worse team next year. It looks like they're going to lose Hyman. Yeah. They're talking about maybe trading Riley. The team is handcuffed because half of the cap is in 4 guys. There's only so much we can do. I think there's, what's our goaltending tandem? Are we putting all of our eggs in the Jack Campbell basket? We have our fourth line other than Jason Spezza is not there right now. Our third line is irrelevant. I think there's a chance that the Leafs could potentially come back worse next year and be in a dogfight to even make the playoffs.
Would that hurt? Would that hurt more than getting eliminated first round? Is them not making the playoffs next year? Would that hurt you more, or would this still be the worst?
You know what? I'd rather them not make the playoffs next year than get eliminated in the first round, 100%. Because
I don't think we can do it again.
Yeah, exactly. I can't do it again. But more importantly, maybe if they miss the playoffs next year, management will look themselves in the mirror and say, "Wow, what a mistake this might have been giving Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shanahan the keys to the kingdom, and maybe they'll make a change. But
Lots
I
of
don't know.
questions.
I think they're going to be in a dogfight to even make the playoffs next year.
It's gonna be a tough division, tough conference for sure. Lots of questions. We'll see how it shapes up in the next year. But as we mentioned, keep an eye out on both of our social medias because we're going to be giving away a Carey Price jersey, a signed Carey Price jersey, in about a week or so. Thank you so much, Frank, for joining us. Frank Crupi of the Hockey Illuminati. Once again, I'm Mikey Aaronworth from Frameworth, and this is us signing off.
Thanks, buddy.
Perfect. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we made it to the end of yet another episode. Thanks again so much for joining us. You can find videos of all of our episodes on YouTube by searching the Sign Off Podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter at Frameworth Sport or Instagram at Frameworth Sports. And hey, if you're not sick of me yet, you can find me on Twitter over at Retrograde Mikey, or you can always find me embarrassing myself over on Instagram at Aaronworth. The Sign Off is a proud product of Fadoo Productions and Sad Styles Productions. Executive producers Mikey Aaronworth and Andrew Bascom. Until next week, this is Mikey Aaronworth, signing off.
Furnished by Sad Styles Productions.
Get into it!